Hi, I'm your host, Anand J. Sukadia, and this is the Limitless One podcast. Join me on this journey as I interview the most inspirational souls who are tapping into their limitless blueprint on a mental, physical, and spiritual level to thrive in uncertain times. If you feel you are so much more than just this body, just this life, and want to tap into your limitless potential, you're in the right place. Here we go, starseeds. Have you ever considered a plan to escape the matrix, leaving your promising career, giving up your home, leaving all your possessions, and embarking on a journey to discover the meaning of life and ultimately to find yourself in the process? Welcome to the Limitless One podcast. I am your host, Anand J. Sukadia. Our guest today has been on a paradigm-shifting 8-year journey so he can bring back this sacred knowledge to share with you today. Vincent Daranyi is a high-performance coach helping individuals become the best and truest versions of themselves. He is the founder of Neoslife, Meet Your Soul Self, the most transformative experience on the planet, launching this year. After careers in investment banking for JP Morgan and Merrill Lynch in London, and starting 2 companies in Brazil, raising multi-million-dollar venture funding and leading 120 people, a split with his co-founder started him out on the journey of asking the deepest questions about life, dissecting what it means to be human. Welcome to the Limitless One podcast, Vincent Daranyi. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me, Anand. Really pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. I got to talk to you and spend time with you for a couple of weeks when we were in Egypt a few months ago. And it's probably a little theme that my podcast audience is noticing, that there's so many people from my Egypt trip that I'm interviewing. But I tell you, every single one of those 75 people were just absolute rock stars and bring in so much knowledge and so much light into this world. And Vincent, you were right at the top of the list, the conversations we had and learning about your journey. I said, we have to get your story on the Limitless One podcast. So yeah, I'm excited to dive into this with you.
Thank you for having me. And yes, I mean, Egypt, Robert really put an incredible trip together. There were so many beautiful souls. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So to set the tone of the podcast, I always ask my guest, what does living a limitless life mean to you?
Wow, that's a big question. But the first thing that pops up for me is like to go beyond the limitations that we perceive to be. Like my ego, my personality constructs an idea of who I am, but I'm so much more than that, right? Like from the day we're born, we're bombarded with information that we soak up like a sponge, especially in early years. And that defines how we look at the world. So when I look at my eyes and I look at you and the window I'm looking out, my mind immediately says, okay, this is a window, this is a wall, this is good, this is bad, this is beautiful, this is ugly. But it's all the filter that has been conditioned through my experiences. And it's a very limited life, a very limited perspective. And so living a limited life for me is going beyond that perception of limitation and kind of really checking in. Like the way we live is based on beliefs, and we take many of our beliefs as truths. And once we start questioning these beliefs, that can be a very difficult work, because then, kind of the world, how we see it might be collapsing, our own world, the world we look at, etc., relationships. But that's really the power of the mind, like challenging its own kind of perspective on the world. And when we do that, and I've been trying to do that for the past 8 years, and every time I'm attacking a belief of myself, so to speak, and I'm deconstructing it, and I'm going down that rabbit hole, I come back and realizing whatever I thought is not true. So it's really going beyond who you think you are. That's and in that vein, realizing why you're here. Like we live our lives, we go to work, we are in relationships, we have family, etc., and then we die. What was the purpose of all of it? Is it just having a good time, or is there something more? I believe there's something more. And for me, kind of pursuing that is living a limitless life.
That's such a beautiful way to express it. I think that, as child, I agree completely. So much of our belief system is formed when we're a child. And, our parents try to do the best they can. The people around us try to do the best they can. We try to do the best that we can. So we have to forgive ourselves for just basically we have to sometimes just be in safety mode or in fear mode in order to avoid certain situations or to block out some, say, emotional things that are going on. So I'm very similar to you in that I've gone on this journey of trying to understand myself. So, forgiving myself for whoever I was in the past with his limitations, not feeling worthy, not feeling loved, feeling alone, not good enough. I think a lot of the people that we come across who are on this journey have had a little bit similar stories of these, like, in order to want to express your full self, we have to understand what it is to be limited, come to that awareness, and then understand, okay, now that was one aspect of my life. Going forward, who do I want to be and who do I want to create and what impact do I want to make in this world? So I think that because of the seeds of pain, that's what leads us into this place of blossoming into the full expression of who we can become.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're always trying our best, right? And best is always what we currently know, whether we are traumatized or we had a really difficult upbringing or not, or maybe we were pampered too much, so we're spoiled. And we're all a product of our past experiences. And becoming limitless or waking up or kind of challenging your belief systems, whatever you want to call it, is kind of going beyond that. And I would go even a step further. I don't think it's so much a question of who I want to be. It's more a recognition of who I truly am. And what do I mean by that? I believe, especially when you have spiritual, psychedelic, or kind of, out of the normal state of mind experiences, that you realize you're more than just the body and this kind of physical brain inside of you. And when you go down these rabbit holes, you realize, there's a deeper calling within you. And you don't even have to actually take psychedelics. Let me make it even simpler. There's kind of an inner knowing or an inner voice. And it's not the chattery voice that says, hey, Vincent, do that, or Ananse, do that and that. And, you got to be careful, all of that. That's kind of the monkey voice. That's the mind, the ego, etc. That's kind of safety or survival driven. But there's something deeper, in the body below the neck, maybe it's in the heart region, etc., that has kind of like a yearning. You're yearning, oh, I want to do that. I always wanted to be whatever, a painter, or I want to play piano, or I want to bring smiles to other people's faces, whatever it is. Or I want to build, I want to build a business that allows people to do X and Y and Z. Could be anything, but I believe we come into this body, which is just a vessel for us to have an experience on this planet in the context of time and space, to evolve, to grow, to learn. But this whoever thing comes, or that we actually are on a higher level, is not something kind of we choose. It's just who we are. And then we go into this body, which limits us, and we're here to kind of wake up and break out of it. And so finding your purpose or finding what you want to be is actually finding yourself in that journey. And I think this is the core part of life. So really, when you kind of, we have the choice we have in every moment is kind of, do I take the easy choice or the hard choice? Or do I take the convenient or pleasant choice, or the kind of that gives meaning and purpose and happiness ultimately? And I think really this is the choice we have. It's either we're going the easy route, which is what other people expect of us, which our conditioning, kind of staying in the routine, doing the same thing over and over again. And that's kind of but it's unfulfilling. So it's easy, but it's, as the saying goes, easy choice is hard life, hard choice is easy life. So it's easy, but it's unfulfilling. And we're kind of okay, what's next? Okay, then I close this deal, and then I make that money and I get that house, but the kind of happiness never arrives. Why is that? Because the other path is recognizing who we are. And that in itself is like a whole journey, of course. And when we recognize who we are, then it's about having the courage to express myself authentically. And when I do that, then I'm in purpose, and then I am fulfilled. So fulfillment is not something that's out of me that I kind of need to acquire through assets or achievements. It's just being myself. But to be myself, I need to rid myself of the trauma, of the conditioning, of the wounds, heal, and then have the courage to just, okay, this is what Vincent does. Might not make sense to you or to other people, or not to my mom or to whoever, but this is my authentic expression. And then I thrive because I'm just being me. And it's also the beauty about it, then it becomes, you switch life from being efforted to effortless. I'm not saying easy. I'm not saying there's not going to be any pain or so. it might actually be even much more difficult at first. Kind of like the hero's journey. First, you have to go into darkness really to recognize yourself, but then you rise up, and then you are in purpose. And then I believe this is why we are here, to express that.
Yeah, it's a journey of remembering our true soul's calling. And I truly believe that before we come here, we understand it fully. And then we sign up for the experiences and the journeys and the lessons, the heartbreaks, the beautiful moments. We sign up for all of it because we want to experience it in order to understand who we truly are at our core level and what we want to, create, not create, but what we want to tap into our soul and our soul's voice and our connection to it. So it's like reconciling the monkey mind, the subconscious, the heart, that coherence, but then also to the higher levels of our higher self. So once we start mastering that, then we start unlocking different levels. And what I love about you is you're one of these people that understood that there was some kind of resistance, some kind of blockage that you had in your life. You took a sledgehammer out and then you started deconstructing all your beliefs. And it's not easy to do that. And I want to understand a little bit about your background. Tell us the story of how you decided that you needed to go on this journey for the betterment of your evolution.
Yeah, if you would have asked me 10 years ago or even less, would we have this conversation about life, consciousness, spirituality, etc., I would have laughed at you because my career started, I studied business, then I was 7 years in investment banking, 6 years as an entrepreneur in Brazil. So, whatever you want to call it, a conventional or, career path, like, okay, let's get stuff done, doing, boom, 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 faster. And then in my second business in Brazil, my co-founder and I had a falling out. I call it like a professional divorce. It was pretty nasty, etc. And I ended up leaving the business and moved from Sao Paulo to New York. And, I thought, okay, this is where I'm going to build my next business. Now I've done it twice. I have a little bit of an understanding and the pitfalls, etc. And I decided to enroll in a coding course in New York. But every morning I woke up and asked myself, what happened? Why did that happen? And what was I doing in Brazil? And why was I creating this business? Like, what's the meaning of all of it? So I started asking these existential questions. A couple of months before, a friend of mine had done a Power of Now, the book from Eckhart Tolle course, which was kind of my first spiritual book. And if you would have mentioned the word spiritual to me, I was like, what's that? Like, anyway, so I started asking these questions and these questions never left me. And now I'm 8 years later and have gone down, I don't know, a million rabbit holes. And I feel also that was only the point I really started living because I broke out of what I thought was life about. I thought, okay, I'm a banker or an entrepreneur and I'm building this career and I'm building businesses and I'm leading people. And then I just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's it. And then happy end. And then I had this break, right? And again, the beauty is, and I like to say and I really do believe it, even though it can be very painful in the moment, everything is a gift. So this divorce, this professional divorce, as painful it was like, it felt like my baby was taken away from me, like the company. It was a blessing in disguise. And I believe the adversities we encounter in life and the people who have the worst lives at some point often come out with the most beautiful gifts for the rest of the world at some point and for themselves, because it helps you and it helped me to find myself. So I started asking these questions and I believe I was always here to start asking these questions. I've always been this inquisitive mind. Like when I was 3 or 4 years old and I could barely speak, I was taking everything apart already. And now I just moved from like taking toys apart and the power outlet and all kinds of weird things to taking kind of life apart or my understanding of it. And so that was the blessing, this professional, conflict that helped me then to kind of push out and start deeper questions. And then, once I looked into the rabbit hole, I was like, oh, wow, this is really interesting. I need to go deeper. And then, I discovered all these kinds of events and I mean, it might sound like cliche, but I went to all kinds of like retreats. I did coaching courses. I started reading spiritual book or self-help books, and then it became spiritual books. And then Burning Man and ayahuasca and other psychedelics. And I'd never taken any substance before the age of 37. I'm 44 now. So it kind of, and the first time I did that, I was like, wow, I thought this is really bad stuff. But like, it was like, it's like, it was so mind opening. So it again helped me to go deeper. And what I took away, and which really I don't know whether it's a conclusion, but where I stand today is like, nothing is as it seems. The mind is just creates an experience, creates a construct, creates a perception of myself and the whole world. But again, it's just a computer, right? And that's also how you explain, how do you call it? Visual, when you look at something and you see something that's actually not there. The mind just creates that all the time with everything. Like, there've even been studies that showed that what we see and perceive through the senses has nothing to do with reality. Like, a cat sees things differently. We believe we see truth. No, we just see what our mind creates, and every human sees something different, right? We might stand next to each other, look at the same thing, at a tree, and you see, oh, this is like an old tree, it looks ugly, and I just see, oh, this is beautiful nature, or the other way around. So in a way, everything is an illusion of the mind, but there's a way of breaking out of that. And, spiritual people call it awakening. And, it's again, one of these words. People put labels and they say, it's such an overused word. I have lots of friends who say, like, don't like the word, but it's that, like, it is whatever word you put it, it's about, and that's really the difficult part, because your mind, I'm using my mind to see the world. And now I'm trying to use my mind to step out of it, right? It's kind of like, it's like a little bit like biting your own tail. And that makes this also so, sometimes these experiences so overwhelming. And when you deconstruct your beliefs, because it's really like, I'm trying to see myself through myself, outside of myself. I don't know how to explain it in a better way.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. So say if you have a home, right, and the city is providing water to you, and the pipes inside your home are really filthy. It's like, that's like the mind. And then when you drink it, you could have the cleanest spring water, coming from the mountains of Switzerland. And if it's going through a house that has rusty pipes, you're not going to experience that same water. So it's everything that we take in is a filtration through our mind, and coming to the place of understanding that our mind is responsible for the reality that we see and experience. That's the hard part for, I think, a lot of people in this world, and especially in a landscape where the media, the government, they always want us to think that something else is the problem. It's the people who don't agree with us. It's the problem. It's the people that don't do this or don't do that or think this way. It's always something else. So then we're living in this victimhood mentality as a society where we're not taking responsibility for our own thoughts, our own actions, our own way of being. And that we are the creators and the arbiters of our happiness. And a lot of people can't seem to understand that. So take us through your journey and like specifically where you started going. I know there was several different modalities in which you kind of experienced, and maybe you can go into some of the most impactful ones for you at that time.
Yeah. And I just want to add something which you just beautifully pointed out, like this kind of what I call creatorship versus victimhood dichotomy. It's like we're educated into kind of this, that the mind is the source of truth, right? Everything is mental, everything is intellectual, everything is logical. This is kind of the time we live in right now. And as a result, I just look at it, I look at outside and say, oh, this person screams at me, this person hurt me, etc. So there's two aspects. One is the moment I change that way of looking at it, and I'm saying I'm the creator of everything. Like when a person screams at me, how I take it is my choice, right? The person might be screaming, but I might be, okay, I don't need to let it affect me. Like that's one step. And the other thing is like, why is someone screaming at me? Why is my partner screaming at me? Why is my boss screaming at me? I'm using just one example and kind of taking ownership for that, because there is so much going on. And the moment I take ownership and I step out of victimhood, I have the power and the responsibility. And people, I think we're educated into that. We don't want that. It's much easier to say, I'm the victim. He or she did that to me. But that's how you stay in your own prison. And the way I kind of like to illustrate it as well, like It's a little bit like I'm holding onto the prison bars and I'm looking at prison, but there's nothing behind me. It's open. There's no fence. I'm not in a building. Yet I keep looking through. I'm a victim. You did that. No. How did I create this situation? And that's freedom. And that's one thing of breaking down kind of an old belief system. Now, in my journey, I mean, 8 years is a long time, right? So many things happen, and there's not one single thing. One thing kind of just prompted another and led to another and then led to another turn. I think, I mean, obviously at the very beginning, just going out and having different experiences, breaking out kind of the social places I've been normally, you know, as a banker entrepreneur. It's a certain type of people that wear certain type of clothes, do certain type of things. And now it might sound a cliche, but this is like a long time ago, like, you know, going to Burning Man, like was one kind of mind opening. I was like, wow, this is like a place where the rules are different and everything is different. That kind of was like a mind opener in terms of everything can be different, right? It doesn't have to be like that. Like to be like, we live in cities with streets and buildings. That's just one way. Like maybe there's another way. And so that was a mind opening experience. And then meditation. And, you know, maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And you can go really, really deep in meditation, right? It's one thing to do like headspace for 10 minutes a day. It's another thing to sit down in stillness for an hour or two. And then you really go places. Then, of course, plant medicine. I had and I kind of stumbled into my first ayahuasca experience in 2015. And I didn't really, actually, most of these experiences found me. And I think that's something else, what I found. Life wants us to succeed, but we need to let it. So when things come into our life, it doesn't mean we need to accept everything, but it's about paying attention. Like, why am I meeting this person? Why is he or she recommending me this book? What is he telling? And then feeling into it rather than thinking. This is really what I'm doing the most work, and which is kind of an endless work, like getting out of the mind, because Vincent that who thinks is very limited. And the Vincent who feels, and by feeling, I mean kind of this inner knowing, rather not the emotions or kind of I'm sad or happy, but like this inner feeling, oh, wow, what Anand just said, like deeply resonated. Maybe I should pay attention. So things are finding us all the time. And the more we pay attention, the more synchronicities and seemingly serendipitous events happen. You know, you bump into someone from the other side of the world at an airport. It's not random. It feels like random. But, you know, when this happens all the time, we start recognizing, okay, there is something much more going on that, again, the mind cannot comprehend. So ayahuasca,
it's recognizing those patterns is what really makes the richness of our life. And to understand those synchronicities, everything is in order. If we look at it that way, there's no such thing as coincidence or chaos even. It's all a part of a divine order. So yeah, if we're tapping into this, one question I had for you actually before you continue is, okay, you decided, okay, you were in New York and you made this decision. Okay, I'm going to dedicate this intention of finding myself through different experiences, right? So at that point, you left, starting a potential business at that time. Did you go into this thinking this is going to be an 8-year journey like you're on right now? Did you give yourself a timeline? Did you have a certain budget? Like, okay, I have, so-and-so in the bank and this is what it's going to last me. So to walk through that a little bit so then we can get a little bit of better understanding what was going through your mindset at the time.
Yeah. So in short, I had no effing clue what I was about to do. Like, it was like I was in New York. I thought I'm going to start another business. And I just had this, no, I wasn't ready. There's some questions I need to ask. You know, why start something without knowing why I'm starting it? Like, I felt like I'm just, continuing the old pattern. And so I was like, okay, I need more time. So I just said, so then I kind of left New York after, I think I was there 5 months, and traveled for a year. But I didn't know it's going to be a year. And in the back, I always had my parents like, Vincent, what are you doing? Why don't you come back? Why didn't you become a banker again, get a job, get a house, And that was actually very intense. And part of my challenge, I had to liberate myself from these kind of people that doubted me. And I had a lot of doubt, right? I didn't know what I was doing. I was just kind of floating around the world. It was European summer. So I went on parties. I was still very much into parties and all of that. Like, very external oriented life. And that actually changed in the process as well, looking inwards. But that came only much later, like, only a couple of years ago. So many years into that journey. So to answer your question, I didn't have a timeline. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know where I was going to live. I was also looking, what is the perfect place to live? So over that time, I was nomadic and then lived in many different cities in sort of succession, looking kind of, for the answer. Actually, that was driving my whole quest. I was like, I want answers. I want it on black and white. This is what I need to do. 1, 2, 3. And of course, there is no answer. Like I'm saying, of course, now, but by asking questions, we are in the process of finding our own answers. And again, like over the time, it brought me to this realization, no one has the answer for me, and it's none of the books, all of the modalities, people, writings, courses, experiences, they just all there to help me and guide me. And my faculty is simply to start listening what resonates and what does not. And one of the most, and that took me many, 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 many years to figure out, one of the most important things I found is to stop listening to others. I don't mean not having conversations, not gathering data, but the decision, what I need to do. If I'm in a relationship and I ask my friend, oh, should I break up or what should I do? He or she will never have the answer from me because it's my journey, right? And so by doing that, we're kind of trying to outsource responsibility to someone else, which is again the easy choice, but it leads to the wrong outcome because no one knows what's good. Neither my parents, often actually parents don't know what's good because they have their own, safety wishes and requirements for their offspring and their own idea what's the right path. But we are here to find our path. So that was actually the hardest, I think one of the hardest things, letting go of this idea of who Vincent thought he was and everybody around him, like the banker or the entrepreneur, and being willing, to stop building a career. Like I look at my peers now, they have founded unicorns, they're MDs in investment banking, they're CEOs of large companies, etc. And I'm like, and I'm goofing around in the world. But I realized I'm being here very critical of myself, right? With goofing. I think at last I'm realizing, no, I'm really doing something. Like I'm really finding answers here for my own journey. And then my gift is to help others with theirs if they so wish.
That's so beautiful. Wow. I think it was Dr. John DeMartini said that when you start listening to the voices, when the voices on the inside are louder than the voices on the outside, that is when you've mastered your life. And I think that, we all have to come to that place because, you and I both went on these journeys of seeking knowledge, gathering data, but then we have to then at one moment say, okay, now I have this data. I am the one in charge. I'm the one in power to create what I want to deliver to this world as my soul. So it's so important. It's good. It's always great. And I've done this path. Same thing with you. I've done the Tony Robbins, I've done the Joe Dispenzas, I've done, all these things, that impacted my life so much. But there are people that are wanting to empower us to then go out and make the decision rather than listen to, any government or any other person, even with my family. Like sometimes they tell me to do things. I live a very unconventional life. I'm 42 as an Indian male. Like if I don't have kids, they're like, oh, when are you going to have kids? When are you going to have kids? But I decided at some point that I'm going to live my path and not just follow something because that's what the tradition is. And now it's my journey to not let their input bother me. So that's the next step of my journey is not to get triggered when they do that, because I know I already am becoming independent in my own thinking, but is just to love them because they're coming from where they're coming from. And that's
exactly
kind of the game.
Exactly. And I think right, that's a beautiful recognition, which also took me forever, right? One is the step of, loving your parents for who they are, because they put you on, or my parents who they are, because they put me on the journey. They gave me all the challenges and all the love and all the factors that made me. If there would be one change, I wouldn't be where I was. And I think we're exactly where we need to be. And then to forgive them for whatever they did, because they always did their best with the best intention. We always all do our best. There's no one wanting to hurt another person. If someone hurts another person, it's because they're hurting. And you said, this kind of, that's a question I've been asking myself over and over again. Like the way in terms of exploration, I feel I'm on a highway and I'm driving and I'm going further and further and further. And at some point I need to take an exit and build something, right? Or do something or express the learning into the world. And this kind of decision when is it time to go into an exit and how long to stay? And when is it time to go back on the highway? So for me, I've taken exits, right? I've become a coach, etc., like on this 8-year journey. But I've always jumped back on the highway, and I'm like, I realized for me, this gestation period, this is what is being birthed through my process, just takes a certain amount of time. I have a coach, she told me it took her 20 years, so there is no right time, right? It might be tomorrow, it might be. And so again, it's about listening to yourself and making the decision. Okay, now I'm ready to step into the world and build something again, or I need to stay in the highway. And another thing, based on what you just shared, is like, the Tony Robbins to Joe Dispenza. What I found here as well is that there's also many dead ends. Like there's things that serve you at a certain point, but that might not lead you where you need to go. So it's also about recognizing, again, no one has the truth. It's for you to find, the truth. And when you take the kind of oldest spiritual texts, which I believe are closest to the truth, if there is such a thing, they might be impossible for someone to read when you're just starting out. Like they didn't resonate with me. Like the Bhagavad Gita, or even texts like the Bible, even though I'm not religious, when they're read properly, not literally, they contain deep truths about being human and life. And but again, it might not be the first document you want to start. You do a self-help course online, and that might be the first step. And then you're like, oh, that's interesting. And someone mentioned this book and this course. And so it's all about progressions, but also realizations that as you take, different experiences, it might not be the answer. Like I did a lot of Tony Robbins a couple of years ago, and then I found, okay, it doesn't work for me because it's not sustainable, because he pumps you up and he's very good at that, and he can drive change and everything, no doubt. But does it ultimately lead to the fulfillment you're seeking and helping to find yourself? I put a question mark.
Yeah, there's like nobody has the complete answer. Everyone has who's figured things out and is teaching it. They found maybe the answer for themselves. But at the end of the day, we sit here from this place of, putting in so much time and energy in, but we're still on this journey. It's not like we ever come to a conclusion. That's not the point of life, is to figure it all out. We never will figure it all out. We're just unlocking clues and hopefully sharing some of the experience that we've had along the way.
Yeah, I think like stay hungry, stay curious, kind of keep going. And, obviously I don't know it because that's clearly not where I'm at. But if there were a conclusion, I think it's when you get to a level where you kind of completely surrender to life. When because we get attached to, I want this, and then the person does that. And I'm like, why? Or something happened, or the weather is not the way I want. Like kind of a surrendered way of being is when there's no more friction with life. Something happens and I'm saying, okay, that happens. And now I'm just going to make a decision based on what happens. But I don't let it take me over. I don't let it make me angry or sad or whatever. And I'm not talking about suppressing feelings. It's about, okay, I'm sad that it didn't happen and it's fine. And I let it go and I move on. And I think, when you look at history, when I look, for example, someone as Jesus, and again, I'm not religious, but I see him as a very evolved human being that was completely surrendered, and that basically came here to teach us about selflessness. And so he was an avatar teaching us something. So I think this kind of might be the end of the journey, if there's such a thing. And we can walk that journey and then, well, I guess when someone listens to this, the first thing they will say like, oh, but I don't want to end up at the cross. Well, it's not ending up on the cross. It's about surrendering to life, like not fighting life. And then actually what I've found in my own experience is then life starts happening for you and through you rather than to you, because you're just like, oh, wow, I have the most, serendipitous meetings, experiences, like things like we went to Egypt that's kind of floated into my inbox randomly, and kind of Egypt popped up in my head. And so life really wants us to succeed, but we have to kind of get out of the way.
Yeah. And look at it as like a gamification, it's like I believe these bodies and this life is just its little avatars, and this is just a small little human experience. But when we understand that we're divine and we're eternal, there is no death, there's no end to it. So what is it that's blocking us from fully expressing ourselves? We have infinite potential. Our minds can conceive of the most amazing things. You look at people like Da Vinci and Michelangelo and the things that they've created, it's mind blowing. The makers of the pyramid, you go in there, and the first question you're asking is like, how did they do this? But instead of asking how they did it, why don't you ask yourself, how can I do this? And when you start asking those questions, then the answers start coming rather than, I can't do this. This is way beyond my abilities. No, you say, how can I do this? If I am infinite being, if I am limitless, if I am divine creation, I'm just an extension of that. What is in me that wants to come out to the world? And really, that's once you get to that place, and even you mentioned Jesus, it's like, yeah, he was put on the cross, but he had the full understanding of, maybe this is my way of showing love and compassion towards the people that are doing this, and that's a lesson in itself, right?
Yeah, very powerful one. And yes, as you said, like I believe we are powerful beyond measure. And again, it's our ego construct and our limited perceptions of who we are that kind of shut us down and think, okay, we need to stay in this job, we need to be in this life. No, we can be anything. And of course, what stands in the way is fear. Is fear that I might be wrong, is fear that no, I actually can't do it. It's like disbelief, etc. And that's all part of who I've been conditioned into. And so this is the journey of letting go of that, like healing these wounds and these beliefs. And then I can thrive. Then I can fully express myself in the world. And I believe really that's the, as you said, we're like, we can do anything what we can imagine, and it might not be possible instantly, right? We still live in the dimension of time and space, but we have this like who we are as a human being. And I think this is really also interesting to touch upon. Like school teaches us how things are, but it's kind of done in a way, this is how it is, and then learn it and believe it. But we don't ever question these things. And what my journey over the last 8 years taught me is that most things I've been told are wrong. And not because, in most cases, not because anybody had bad intentions. It's just because that's just how it, they've been told the same thing and then they have been told, etc. And so we're all living in these belief bubbles. And it applies to everything, including science. Like, right? Like, we know about Egypt that there's certain inconsistencies between what traditional Egyptologists say and what kind of archaeology says in terms of dating, etc. But then we're just like, no, we just let's ignore it. And so this willingness on any level in science or anywhere, me personally, to question what I believe, it can be very difficult because it might destroy everything that I've kind of built my life on. But it's the door to freedom. If I want to have a fulfilling life, it's not about the next big house. I might enjoy a big house. There's nothing wrong with a big house, but that won't lead to fulfillment. What will lead to fulfillment, I believe, and that's what my journey has taught me, is to question and, find my truth. And there's so many layers because there's also so much conditioning. So it's really it's an intense journey. And that's why 8 years, I'm still on it. And, it might also not be for everyone. But I think what's important for everyone is if they're kind of hitting walls in their life, and in some way or shape or form, we all do, I believe, then it's about asking questions and taking ownership. Okay, why is that? What am I doing? And what can I do differently to change that? And that's the path to liberation. That's literally like stopping to look through the bars of the prison that I've built myself in my mind and say, oh, actually, I can just, it's an open lawn behind me, a field. I can just walk away from the bars, but I can't, no. Or I once saw it beautifully in a video where the guy was handing a pen and he's like, oh, letting go is so hard. No, letting go, you just let go. But opening your hand might be very scary if you have never done it. And that is the process I believe we're on, to kind of, take a step back, question what we're doing, seeing how we are actually creating our own experience through our perspectives and limitations and wounds, and then say, okay, take a deep breath, do whatever therapies, ceremonies, or you need to do to help you on the way, and then letting go. And frankly, I'm still in the midst of the process. It's because there's so much shedding that needs to go on. It's a long journey. And again, based on my understanding, I will go as far as I can in this life, and then I take over and, I continue in my next life with, and And once you see it like that, I'm not interested in anymore. That maybe has been also one of my bigger changes. Is like, I was this guy who partied, full out all the time, 24/7, very much driven by external pleasure. And now I'm like, I've gone inside and I'm like, no, this doesn't satisfy me. Okay, another part is that it actually feels empty these days. And I'm like, okay, why am I here? What am I here to do? And getting rid of my conditioning and wounding, that's what I'm most interested in. So I can be the full Vincent that I came here to be.
Yeah, it's so beautiful that you understand that the whole part of the journey is important. You can't just reach the place of going inward without experiencing all the external simulation.
I wish.
So that's part of the beauty of this life. And when we can start marrying those two opposite spectrums, that's what the beauty is. And I was talking about this with Robert Grant yesterday, is like, you have to express, or you have to show love for the shadow side of yourself or the place that you were in order to merge the new version. And no great change in society or transformations happen without questioning the old systems. And then once that old system is questioned and there's a consensus, okay, maybe this is not the right way, we move into a new way of doing things, and we never look back and go revert to the old ways. And we have to constantly do that in every aspect of our lives. You talked about education, but it's literally every system of control. It has that. It's religion, it's education, it's government, it's science, it's medicine, right? So we need to start questioning all of these things to see how they affect everyone from a collective level, but also as an individual level. And it's our jobs to question every aspect of ourselves, because yeah, like you said, if we're keeping hitting walls, it's the decision and awareness to understand we are the responsible ones here. And it's a hard thing to become aware, but once you do become aware, it's now the easiest decision, because every other potential opportunity is open to you. Once you stop looking at that wall, you turn around and say, okay, there's an entire infinite potential of choices that I can make in order to move into a different place. So it's an interesting simulation, game, life, whatever you want to call it, that we're in. And I know that in order to demolish a lot of these things, you did work a little bit with plant medicine, and I want to hear about your ayahuasca sessions. I know you did an entire Substack blog series on this, which is very interesting. And for anyone who wants to read the entire thing, I highly suggest it. But can you give us an overview of your journey into ayahuasca and some of the great awareness lessons and perspectives that you reached?
Yes. So my first ayahuasca experience was in 2015. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just curious. And that kind of drove my whole journey, kind of this, I try anything. Nothing will kill me. I try anything. And so this experience you're referring to was last year in October. So not that long ago, 6 months ago. And in between, I had done, several times ayahuasca, maybe 10, 12, 14 times. And so this was a series of 4 ceremonies, 4 nights. And by one of my teachers, he's called Dr. Nader Bhutto, and he has done incredible work. I also encourage people who are curious and try to understand more about life, health, disease, and how everything is connected. He has created an incredible curriculum around this. We were sitting in ayahuasca because it was one of the learning modules. So a lot of it was theory, some was practice, some was working on the body of other people, releasing trauma, and then this was about recognizing who we truly are. And so in all the other ayahuasca experiences, you kind of just you're told, okay, don't resist it, just go with it, and that's kind of the instructions, and then you drink. So here he shared a lot more with us and gave us instructions, and I share that in my blog, how to go through it. And it allowed me to have like a breakthrough that I never had in ayahuasca. Previously, I've always seen myself in this kind of, animal spirit, kind of underworld, kind of the darkness of ayahuasca, with all the challenges where I see all my fears, etc., and I'm faced with them, and it can be very scary and very intense. And so in the first night, that happened again. I was again in the mind, and I was like, oh, what's going on here? I'm overwhelmed. And I was actually asked to surrender everything. So I often find myself in choice points in ayahuasca. One is you take this route, like e.g. surrendering everything, and you see the light, you see truth, etc. Or not doing it and you stay asleep and kind of, not fully, coming alive. So both of these choices, like letting go of everything, all my money, all my who Vincent is, like everything, it was really, and if you haven't drunk an ayahuasca, it's so real. It is real in that moment. It's like, it's not like, oh yeah, I just say it and then tomorrow I do something else. No, it feels like it's a choice. You have to make it now. And now I have to go one ceremony back, because what allowed me to actually be seriously willing to let everything go and give away my money and everything, which I'm actually very much, like from my trauma perspective, very much, holding on to, was because a year earlier I had an experience where I had to strip naked. So my choice point was there, strip naked or don't and stay asleep. And this has been something that came up over and over again. So in this ceremony, I was like, for lack of a better word, I got to do it, because I'm on repeat. And I actually think, I really believe that ayahuasca is just a compressed version of life. Like in life, it's the same. We keep getting the same message. If we bump into the same wall, it's because we haven't completed the learning. So here it was the same thing. I was shown like strip naked and I didn't want to do it. So it came back and back and back. So in this ceremony, which happened to be in, I think, Tulum, yes. And I was with friends, right? It was strangers and friends in the group, 20 people. And I'm like, really? And so I walked up into the middle of the circle and I stood there and I started taking off my shirt and my trousers, etc. And then, my underwear. And in the moment I did it, I was like, wow, this was so easy. And I struggled with it so much. And it really is, a metaphor for life for me. We have so much resistance, things like leaving a job or leaving a relationship that's unhealthy. And we don't want to do it because we're scared of what comes. But then when we do it, we're like, oh, that wasn't hard. It's just the resistance, the kind of safety and fear-driven resistance. And so I stripped naked and I was like, wow, that was easy. And so I did it 2 more times. I got dressed again, did it 2 more, And the interesting thing, what I learned, I took 3 things away from it. There's things in life I need to do that I have extreme resistance. But when I do them, they're easy. And thirdly, and that's what a friend shared in the ceremony, when I do them, they're powerful. Like she said, the energy, when you strip naked, the energy in the whole room changed. Because there was something about overcoming my resistance and showing my true self, both literally as well as from, metaphorically. So anyway, fast forward to the experience now a year later in October last year. And I'm again faced with this impossible choice, letting go of my money and everything and of my social media. And, I'm talking about the stuff we're talking about today. So it's a big ask, like becoming nobody, basically, was the question. But based on my previous experience, I said, like, okay, if this is what it takes to live a beautiful life, to fulfill my purpose, I will let it go, everything. And then I kind of collapsed that night. And that was a very intense experience. The next night I came back and I was like, wow, what's going to happen tonight? And obviously, we had an integration session the next morning. And when I shared my story, I was like, I was reflected, that it was reflected to me that, maybe you don't have to let go everything, but it was about letting go of the attachment. It's not about giving the money away. It's about the attachment to the story I was holding. And I was like, wow, okay. And so I went back into the second and third and fourth ceremony, and they were so beautiful, like the heavens opened. I'm trying to describe it in detail in my blog, but basically I rose up from this darkness of an ayahuasca experience, and it kind of took an elevator into higher and higher in light. And so the second night, it was all love, and it was such love for everything. I just wanted to fly home and hug my parents, and for everybody, all my enemies, everybody. I just wanted to hug everybody. It was like, thank you, life. And then the third night was a celebration. It was like, okay, you made it, kind of like you've overcome this resistance and you freed yourself from the money story. And that's a whole other story why I have this money story, because my grandparents lost everything in the war, and it's again this conditioning. It's not a logical choice. It's like it's embedded in my body. So then it was this whole celebration, and then the fourth night, it was really like, I would call it, I saw the light of God, if there's something. It was so, again, our language doesn't have the word to describe it. You can only experience this, and if you don't, then you probably don't believe it. That's why we have to go through these experiences. No book can teach you that. And it was so powerful. And it showed me that when I let go and surrender, that's what opens up. And I think, again, it's a metaphor for mine, all of our lives. It's about letting go of the attachment, of the holding on to, of the grasping, of the yearning, and be here right now and embrace life and be grateful for what it brings you, whether it's painful or beautiful, because it's all there for you. And if you were now to ask me, how is it going? I mean, of course, it's a continuous struggle. Like also, as I share in my ongoing blog series, it's like, even though these experiences are very powerful, the hard part is really bringing it back into daily life, because we're so trapped in the system, in the way we think about life, and everybody around us hasn't changed, right? So you kind of look, we are herd animals. We look like, what is everybody else doing? And that's also the trap. But yeah, so it's an ongoing process of continuous shedding and letting go.
Amazing. So tell us, what did God share with you? What is God?
So in that experience, I just, I felt it. It was like a blue, white, shimmering light. And that's how other people have also described it. But it was just this like, okay, you're in the journey, just keep going, keep surrendering, keep letting go, trust yourself, No, and he didn't say that literally, but that's kind of what I took away, the investment banking and the kind of startup thing. Yes, you've done that, but that's not you. You're here on a different journey, and just keep trusting, even though it might, it's an ongoing path that needs to be walked. But then more recently, even it's actually just a couple of weeks ago, I had another experience that wasn't ayahuasca, but a mix of substances. And now some listener might be thinking I'm constantly on some substances. Actually, not at all. It's very, some of these experiences just find me, and then I'm just listening in and say, okay, yes or no. So it's all, I believe life is all about discernment and kind of checking in what is good for me, no matter what other people say or do. And so I felt called to go there. And that was my most powerful experience yet. And it catapulted me out of my body, so to speak. And I became consciousness. Like I was just pure consciousness, and I found myself, and myself is obviously not Vincent, but I found my experience at the beginning of the universe. There was nothing. There was just me, but not me being like us. It was just consciousness, but I was there. And then I saw how consciousness created, and it felt like I created, like, everything up to the world, and then Vincent. And then back into consciousness. And I mean, there's no words, and it sounds so incredible. But basically what I realized in the process, and maybe that's the more interesting part, is how I'm creating everything. It's my consciousness that creates this experience. It's my consciousness that creates these limitations. And I can let go of it. I have the key. I have the key out of the prison, or I can let go of the prison bars, however you want to think about, or to use Plato's cave allegory. It's like I'm looking at the shadows, and I can get up and walk out of the cave and realize, wow, the world is beautiful, and the world is here in service of me. And it was incredibly powerful again. And of course, you come back from the experience and you're like, or I am like, okay, I'm back in my apartment in these four walls. So the difficult part, the beautiful thing about these experiences, they can show you something, including, going very deep in meditation. So there's no need to take substances. It's just a shortcut. They show you reality. That's how I look at it. This is not hallucination. This is reality. You kind of moved out of the limitations of your body and mind, and you're just pure consciousness, and you see it. And then the very challenge is to come back into the body and like say, okay, I'm living that now. I am not letting myself drive by fear. And it's very hard because it's not just a mental decision. Like our traumas and fears and the limitations, they're in the body. They're physical. That's also when something triggers us, it comes up in the body. It's not a logical choice. It's reactive. And so it's really about reprogramming our body. And it's interesting. I make one more loop here. For a long time, science, and I think the majority of science still thinks about it like that we have a lot of junk DNA that has no function. That's not the case. This is just DNA that's not activated yet. And when we change our state and we kind of raise our way of being from the lower survival-driven chakras, and we open the heart and go higher and higher, we allow these changes to happen. And then suddenly new gene sequences get activated, new proteins get not created, but get put into the body and transcribed. And so we are this very powerful machine, but we are using just kind of the bottom percentage of it. And so, this is really what my journey has become about, is kind of how can I unlock the true power of myself? And then how can I show others how to do that? And that's really an experience I'm now working on, to create a retreat, because obviously there's a billion retreats out there and all of that, but for people have a very powerful experience that really gives them a glimpse of who they really are. And then all the modalities around that allow them to kind of integrate and really bring it back into their life. And I think I'm making one more segue here. And I think it's incredibly important that we have these type of experiences, because the world is changing very fast. And I'm especially concerned, even though I'm a technophile, I love technology, and I went to Singularity University a decade ago, which is all about exponential technologies and how it can change the world. But what I'm seeing is, just like nuclear fission, we can build a bomb, or we can build a, power plant. And the same here with AI. And AI is really this technology that will allow us to create any content that looks real, that might not be real. It will, there's all the biases that are programmed. It will make it already making a lot of people redundant. So what I'm seeing is this is really pushing humanity at the edge, and it could lead to a dystopian event. And I believe the only way for us, because we can't stop technology, people, even if we make laws and regulations, someone is going to keep developing it. So the only way out I see is for us to wake up. And I hope, that this is what I'm in the process of creating is a contribution to that, because I feel like we might be going to some dark places otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. AI is such a double-edged sword. And, there's a lot of people that are really advancing it right now, with the chat GPT and all this kind of stuff. But, there is inherent biases that are built into it. Like you said, there's redundancy, so it'll take away a lot of jobs. There's a lot of confusion as well, because you could create a lot of fake stuff that appears completely real. So, when we have to take a step back, and this is an inflection point in humanity, is like life will never be the same again once this technology is fully unleashed. And even if we have regulation in the United States, maybe, in another country, there's no regulation. So, bad actors can go there, but, hopefully we have people that are really trying to create good versions of AI. But yeah, there's so much there. But yeah, how do we start waking up? What would you say, what would be the first step one could take if they're looking to really understand who they truly are?
Well, I think that's an incredible question. And I'm not sure I have a short answer to that. I think so looking back on my journey, one is like, find people that you feel are a step ahead of you, and don't let it, because one step ahead, they might still walk into a dead end, and there's so many dead ends on the journey, but let it guide you, like, oh, maybe I can try that. And then again, for me, it's always coming back and develop this discernment, this feeling, checking in with yourself. And you can do that with anything. Like, do I want to go to this dinner party? Like, I might feel, from an inner knowing, I might feel no, but in my mind say, oh, but there might be an important person, go. The discernment says no. Like, so it's a no. And so step one would be like, find people that kind of inspire me. If I don't have anybody around me, then, and then have a conversation with them, like go online, like, and put your questions, like maybe even ask ChatGPT, and again, use discernment, like, does it resonate? And then there's beautiful experiences, like, Joe Dispenza event, go to a retreat, try things that might not resonate. Actually, what I mean is not resonate. They should resonate, but try things that might scare you, as in like, oh, this is too spiritual. No, yeah. But maybe, expose yourself. It was a little bit like, for me, like going to Burning Man, it's such a different world. So it opened my eyes. So the amazing thing is now, like kind of 10 years later, a lot of it is online, right? You can just go on YouTube and you just go from one to the next and the next and the next. So it's really, curiosity will get you very far. Like I believe like courageous curiosity and open-mindedness are like the path to whatever you're seeking, and removing judgment, because not only will it kind of hinder your journey, but when you judge, you actually judge yourself, like, because you put limitations on others, which is putting yourself also into prison. So open-mindedness, curiosity, the people around you, people that you might have come across, and explore. There is no one path.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's understanding, firstly, making the declaration that I don't have all the answers. Okay, so then the answers are out there. Maybe ask yourself the right questions. Why is it that I have pain in my body? Or why is it that I don't feel love? So write down all the pressing questions you have. Why am I not fulfilled at work? Why am I not happy in a relationship? All these things, right? So writing it all down, journaling about it, and just really being totally honest with yourself. I think that's where life starts to transform, is when you're totally honest with yourself. If you don't have the body that you desire, okay, why is it that? What decisions am I making? Right? So it's coming to those places, and then, yeah, absolutely connecting with the people that inspire you, whether you know them or not. And there's so many different places that you can kind of get those answers from. And I know that you also are helping people through this journey, and so, putting all of the knowledge that you've gotten together to be able to help others that maybe don't have the ability to take years and travel and do all the hard work and the hard lessons that you've came to the conclusion of. So can you tell us a little bit about your coaching program?
Yeah, I mean, it's open really for anybody that's curious. Like, as over the years, I realized, I mean, I've worked with a number of people, from like tech CEO to kind of mom, and and also from like, I ticked all the boxes in life. I have all the money, everything, all the freedom, but I'm not feeling it. I don't feel that fulfillment to, I'm tethering on suicidal depression. And I mean, in the end, we all want the same thing. And we might be in different places, but the realization that the answers are not external. So often people come to me and they have something is nagging them. It can be either I want more from life, or I'm stuck somewhere. And then as we start working together, we kind of look at everything. The longer we work together, the more we can look at, because everything is connected, right? If your relationship is challenging or there's health issues, it filters into work, into your financial situation, into how you feel about yourself, your body awareness, all of it. So I have really, because I found, like, you need to go down all the rabbit holes. And of course, I haven't gone down all, but I keep going down as many as I can. And I'm trying to connect all the dots. And that's what I like to offer my clients, like the full range. And if I cannot, and obviously there's many things I might not be a particular expert in, then I can send them to someone, right? It's like this kind of, I'm basically your what's the name? Like your playing partner, and that you can, shoot a ball over and I will return it. And then we play that game together. And so, yeah, it's really, I've worked, I mean, obviously based on my past as an investment banker and entrepreneur, this is kind of also the people who read my blog. This is the people I speak to. So I've worked with a number of them, because they kind of say, okay, hey, he was with me, sitting next to me like 10 or 15 years ago. And now he's talking about all of that. And there's something that's interesting. I want to learn and understand more of that. Maybe there's something in it for me. And that often is how the conversation starts.
Beautiful. And can you share like maybe like an experience you had with a client where they were in a place similar to yours at the beginning, and how they've kind of transformed after working with you?
Oh, which one to pick? Yeah, so I worked with one client for an extended time of period, who was a partner, or is a partner at a VC firm, also the founder of the firm. And he initially came, there were a couple of things like in any life that he wanted to work on. And we had crossed paths at some point. So he came to me and said like, oh, I just want to, start having a conversation. We started having a conversation. And then over the process, we worked really on all the aspects. We worked on relationship. We worked on health. We worked on life purpose. We worked on restructuring his company so he could do more of what he likes. We also looked at whether there needs to be larger changes in terms of what he does in life. And it's been extreme. It's so beautiful. Like that's, I think, when we realize we do what we love, because it's so rewarding for me to work with someone, because he was extremely open-minded and curious also about all the spiritual aspects, right? And it's really, no one has to go down a spiritual route. I believe we come to a point when we need to start asking these questions. That's what my own journey showed. But some people don't want to go there, and then so we don't go there. But it's when you allow yourself to really look at the whole realm, then you can open, then everything can open up, and then that's where profound change is possible.
Beautiful. Yeah. Just having the conversations with you in Egypt and being in group conversations with you, anytime somebody brought up a book, you're like, oh yeah, I read that book, or I did some work with this guy. It was crazy. Like you were always the one like that knew everything people were talking about, which is incredible. It just shows your curiosity and, your passion for stepping out of your comfort zone and, being humble about like, okay, yeah, I don't have all the answers. I do want to explore as much as I can to then synthesize it through my own lens and see what works, what doesn't work. So for those who want to kind of step into this arena, having a shamanistic guide like yourself to navigate those waters, it would really, really benefit people that, don't want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in 8 years to go on these journeys. It's really incredible.
Yeah, I think it's really about, helping you to find your own answers. I don't have the answers. I can just show you a lot of stuff because I've been on this journey for 8 years full time, right? It wasn't a hobby. I didn't on the side. I was like, okay, all in. And for a long time, I struggled with that. And then at some point I said, no, this is who I am. This is what I do. And then I go out and I look for answers and I bring what I find back and I show it to you or others. And then you do with that what you want, right? Mm-hmm. None of us has, and I think that's also, beautiful segue back to where we kind of started. None of us, there is no answers for us in the external. Like there is no external authority, no government, no partner, no parent, no society. We have to find our own answers. And this is the journey of life, to find the answer. In my case, who is Vincent? What am I doing? What is my gift? And the realization that all the struggles, all the adversity is actually itself a gift for me to unlock my gift. And that brings immense gratitude and peace, and also puts me into the creator seat rather than the victim seat. And showing these things, people, this is what I love to do.
Beautiful. And, stepping into that journey of transformation for everyone individually is difficult enough, but then also with the world changing as rapidly as it is, we talked about AI, but also our financial systems are changing drastically. And I know that you've dived really deep into Bitcoin. And I believe you said on your blog, you have about 3,000 hours of research and study on it. So can you tell us like your views on Bitcoin?
Let me try to really compress it. It is, again, a journey one has to go for oneself, because I can tell you, and I will, what I think, but for you to believe it, or not you, but the listener or anybody else, you have to go it down yourself. You have to see it for yourself. After all these hours, what I found is that money is whatever we decide money is. And right now we believe the dollar is the dominant currency and for global trade and everything, because we decided that it is as a world. If we all decide tomorrow the dollar has way too much debt, or it doesn't work, or it's the wrong thing, and I will get to in a second how it squares off with Bitcoin, then it collapses. There is no more dollar. It's a construct that is created by all of us as we believe in. And of course, we are born into it, so we believe it. But again, you can question that. And so what Bitcoin showed me is that one of the most important aspects, there's a number of aspects that make money a sound, and one is the scarcity of it. If you can create more of it at will, you dilute everybody else who's holding it. And that's really what we've seen. Like whatever the central banks say, what happened is they first shut down everybody, then they printed a lot of money to compensate for it and to boost the economy, etc., and to send everybody checks. And then everything got more expensive. Yeah, it's a very simple one-to-one connection. You print more money. If there's only $1 million in the whole world, and let's say the only thing we buy with, to make it simple, we buy with dollars is houses, and there's only 100 square miles of real estate, then each dollar buys a certain amount. Now I print another million, so I double the supply of money. Well, everything is going to cost twice as much now immediately. So I'm really reduced it to a very simple example to show the direct connection, but that's actually what's been happening. Obviously, with the delay, everything is getting more expensive. And the beauty about what Bitcoin does, I mean, a number of things, but one is it is programmatically, the amount of money is programmatically limited. There will ever only be 21 million Bitcoins. And the other thing is it removed the intermediary. Like there's trust within the Bitcoin network without a single source of trust. I don't need to trust a central bank or a government. And that's incredibly powerful because whoever we put the trust in will abuse the trust. We've seen that in history. We have seen that in, highly deflationary country. And we have now seen it in the Western world as well over the last couple of years. And I think it was Rothschild who said, as long as you give me control of the money, you can make any laws you want. The money is really the spigot, is like really what controls everything. And it has been extremely abused over the last, in history and over the last years. And it also leads to things like the reason why governments can go to wars that people don't want them to go to is because they just print money. Actually, taxation is not really necessary to finance the government. They can just print money. And interestingly, also, the Fed is actually a private institution owned by the banks. It's not even a government institution yet. It runs the governments.
Yeah, private banking money, families.
yeah. And I mean, this is a whole other rabbit hole, which we can do like a number of podcasts. And so Bitcoin opened all these eyes because all these economic theories I studied, when I studied business and when I worked in investment banking, they all don't hold true. Like the reality is you need to have sound money, and sound money means you cannot at will create more. And I think we will probably in our lifetimes witness, and I mean, this is a big statement, but we will witness the dollar collapsing and all the other fiat currencies. And it will be a time of extreme, it will be, I hope it doesn't happen, but I think we're just overstretching the system, and also the central banks run out of tools. And that's kind of what brought, that's what I realized on the Bitcoin journey, that this is from a financial, I don't believe Bitcoin is the answer to everything, but from a financial system perspective, it is the only alternative that exists as of now. And Bitcoin is also very different than crypto. Like crypto, I just create something and I can change the monetary policy. The beauty about Bitcoin at this point is no one has the power to change the rules. So there will only be 21 million and the way it's issued, etc. And it's the most secure computer network on the world. So anyway, this is, it's a huge topic. So I just dropped a couple of things, but it was really, for me, back to your question, the biggest eye opener was that it showed me how our current financial system is really based on abuse and lies, and is unstable inherently.
Yeah,
and extractive form, like it takes the money away from people without them even knowing. And they call it inflation and they teach us it's necessary. Yeah, it's bullshit.
It's incredibly profound the way that you described it. And just so everyone knows, the average lifespan of a fiat currency is about 40 years. So we're like a little bit past that at this point. And at some point, you said you think it's going to happen in our lifetime, but it's actually, there's no doubt about it. It's most likely going to. If you look at right now, the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they're all starting a change around their financial system, and they're not using the petrodollar. Saudi Arabia is also looking into not dealing in dollars anymore. And if that happens, based on the energy and everything like that not being used for dollars, it's going to create a worldwide issue monetarily. And then the dollar, we just keep inflating. During the lockdowns in 2020, with all these monies being printed, all of the citizens got peanuts compared to some of these large institutions, BlackRock and all these other companies. Hundreds of billions came to them, free money. They started buying up all this farmland, buying up all these single family homes. And if you look at what's going on right now with rents in the United States, it's absolutely insane. So there was maybe they had knowledge of this prior. Maybe it was good financial strategy. Who knows? But at the end of the day, inflation is a tax on the poor. No doubt about it. $5 doesn't mean what it meant 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, even 3 years ago.
Yeah, and it's been throughout history like that. If you look at the dollar in the 1920s, and everything changed once we decoupled from the gold standard, because suddenly you could print as much as you wanted. And that's when really inflation started to work itself into the system. And now, obviously, in extreme speed over the last years, because just trillions. I mean, like when the bailout in 2000, I think the TARP program, it was called in 2008 or 9, was like $700 or $800 billion that Obama approved. And everybody was like, that's crazy, so much money. Now it was just a couple of, I think 4 or 5 trillions have been printed.
It was like two rounds of 2.5 trillion or something, and nothing, like nobody was questioning in the media. Nothing. Let's just print $2 trillion. 40% of the world's money, or so the dollar supply has been printed in the last 3 years. Or something like some crazy stat.
That's like you just touched up on another. I mean, just in the last minute, you touched on so many topics. We could have, I don't know how many podcasts on those, but like the media and all, the government and media, they're unfortunately, like the more you look into it, the more you realize they're kind of all in the same bed. And that's really unfortunate, that because the media is there to actually challenge, right, the narrative, and it's not happening. Like they don't point to the real issues. They tell a story that keeps us in kind of, in the system. And that's, all the points you raised, like the everything is getting more expensive, how government is kind of abusing the role, because government is meant to be a supporter of us. It's in service of the citizen, but it's turning around. It's becoming the master, and we are the servants. And so all of this with AI and the world changing and the money, and it's like, we need to wake up, like for the lack of a better word. I'm going to keep looking for a better word for the people who don't like waking up. But it's really wake up to reality. Like, and I believe we need experiences and community, and it's happening, right? You have the movement in the Bitcoin community and, in the spiritual community, and people seeing what's happening, but it's kind of suppressed. It's like, it's not in the media. So if you're not looking for it, you might not be seeing it, and you might think the two of us are crazy. It's probably not your average listener that thinks that, because they want to have this type of content. But we're right now talking about a completely different reality than what 90+% when they're watching TV see. And so we live in a different reality. And I think it's extremely important for our freedom and well-being and thriving as a human species to wake up. And I actually believe that all these negative events are actually here in service for us to wake up, whether it's Corona, whether it's the money printing. The world is asking, hey, wake up, see what's going on. Come on, you're like powerful beyond measure. See beyond your limitations, see beyond the system you've been kind of, and that's really the movie The Matrix, what it's about. And movie The Matrix is not sci-fi, it's reality. Maybe you don't have a connection, a physical connection with whatever that is stabbed into your back of your head, but it's about realizing that what we perceive as reality is not reality. And we can question it. And that brings us back to the beginning of the podcast, right? Questioning your beliefs, questioning what you see, questioning what people tell you, what the media tells you, what the government tells you.
Yeah, it's all unfolding in our favor. It's being done on purpose. So, hey, we have to realize the falsities that we believe in and deconstruct those thoughts and create something new, which is serving to humanity and more love. But it's all a part of the same construct of order, whereas it wants us, this force on the highest levels, whether they're corrupt or whatever, on the highest levels of their consciousness, because everything is God. They want us to ascend. They want us to wake up. You look at the back of the dollar bill, it was created in 1792 with Washington. George Washington designed it, and he has the same exact, the top of the pyramid is off. That's consciousness. That is the Kundalini rising. Once we get to that state of opening ourselves up to spirit, that's when we all wake up, and all the other stuff is just a distraction. And it's a part of this game to help us. And it's all beautiful if we think about it in those.
Totally. There's no good or bad. It's just all in service of us. And something might be feel extremely unjust or unfair, And yes, it's there again in service of us to wake up. And I also believe it's not about fighting the existing system. It's about creating a new system. And then people will see, oh, yes, I want to be here. This is so much more beautiful, right? It's not going at war. Of course, it will create conflict. And of course, when you create something new, but I like to think about it as, when the forest is burning, you don't successfully fight it with water. You don't fight it. You create another fire. So it runs out of, fuel to burn. Mm-hmm. And so we just need to light another fire.
It's beautiful. Vincent, I want to thank you so much for coming on this podcast. Last question is, why do you think you came here to Earth, and what did you want to experience?
Wow, why did I came here? Well, I think at last, after my previous careers, I am living why I'm here. It's not fully expressed yet. It's an ongoing journey I'm in, like as we all are. But I believe I came here to question things, to ask deeper questions, go down the rabbit holes, transform myself in the process, and then, show it through my way of being, not even through teaching. I don't think we learn through didactics. It's about us embodying the way of being that we would like to see in the world. It's me doing the work. It's me letting go of the fears of, surrendering and all of that. And then I'm a living example. And then if I do it well, and, then people can say, oh, wow, yeah, that's a role model, etc. So, and, on whatever scale, if it's just for my family, then that's the gift. If it's to a larger community, and I hope, and that's my dream, to build community around all of the things that we talked about, through, initially a retreat format, and then a center where we come together to kind of create ourselves anew, if you would like to say so.
That's so beautiful, brother. And yeah, the true blessing that we can offer is our embodiment of everything. And that's how you inspire in the best way. You can't tell people, I know the answer. This is right. This is the way. Show them what works for you. If they're inspired, they'll go that path, or they'll find another path, but at least they know it's possible for themselves. And one of the missions of this podcast is to always give people hope that it can always get better, and you can always be more fulfilled and happier, because that is your divine right.
Nothing is impossible. And as you said, like, no one has the answers. That's the old system. It tells you what to do. Like, we're told what to do by whoever. The new system is, you're looking inside, you're feeling, you're connecting with yourself. And there's a lot of guidance and support and people showing and living it. But you find the answer within yourself, your inner authority, your inner knowing. And from there, anything is possible.
Absolutely. So tell us how we can learn about you a little bit more, and how we can learn about your work.
You can go onto my website. That's vincentdaranyi.com. vincentdaranyi.com. I haven't updated it for a couple of years, so it doesn't reflect everything we talked about, because people usually find me other ways, word of mouth mostly. But you can have a look there. You can find me on Instagram, same thing, Vincent Daranyi. And then the blog, the newsletter you've mentioned, including my ayahuasca experience and my recent journey, and where I really try to very vulnerably share how I'm struggling with a lot of the things that I talked about, and then you get up again and keep walking. And that's myawakening.substack.com.
Beautiful. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really such a beautiful conversation. I appreciate you too.